Coogs house. People said they wanted the Houston Cougars to get active in recruiting the class of 2026 and 2027 in football. And so, with 20 offers since the end of spring practices, I think it's safe to say that's exactly what's happened.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who can step by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Make your first listen each and every day as an everydayer like you are. If you want to join the conversation but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. What do you think of Chicago-style pizza? I'll talk about the Pope and Chicago and some Villanova stuff later in the episode, but I want to start off talking about all these Houston Cougar football offers that are floating around the ether since spring ball ended. Second segment, I want to make that Nova comparison, talks about Houston, Nova, basketball, Villanova, etc. Third and final, we got to make sure we talk about Houston baseball heading to Arizona State this weekend for an intriguing matchup that actually has some implications on the postseason as well. Today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire Stick TV. More on that later in the show. But this football group, man. So it was interesting during the spring practices, lots of commentary on social media services, on other sports talk, whatever, about what Houston was and wasn't doing in the class of 2026 and 2027 and the recruiting they're building around Keisean Henderson. Now, admittedly, Houston has a gigantic commitment from Keisean Henderson, the number one player in the state of Texas in the class of 2026. He's been committed to Houston for a long time. Houston offered him as a quarterback back when most people saw him as just an athlete that has clearly carried over. He's continued. Other people are now calling him a quarterback as well. Houston was early to that train, but it seems like the playing for his hometown is going to work for Keisean and all of that. And building that class out and doing some research, Houston currently, I have at least 20 offers handed out to kids in high school presently, high school athletes for the Houston Cougar football program since the spring football game. That's roughly not even quite a month. Houston's been getting after it on the recruiting trails as far as quantity goes. I'd argue some of these are very quality picks as well. They've only picked up one commitment. Troy Press is a big offensive lineman, 6'6", 300-pound Colleen Shoemaker kid, road grader type, can play guard or tackle at the high school level. I imagine he's a big guard at the elite level. We'll see kind of how his body transforms. If he gets to an athletic 300 pounds, he could also play some tackle because he's got like good instincts, but we'll see where athleticism goes. That's the only commitment they've got in this window. However, since the spring practices ended with the spring game or scrimmage, I would point out here that the 20 offers is a big, big deal. I would stress also, as clear in doing this, that these 20 kids, we'll go through the names really quickly in rapid fire in a second, are all from drivable distances to the University of Houston. No one's more than 4 or 5 hour away commute to the school. The focus is clearly going to continue to be finding local Houston and Texas area kids, occasional Louisiana kids coming in as well, all to add to the roster. Let's go in reverse order. In April, they offered Malik Bracey, a defensive back from Argyle, Texas, Keisean Henderson, a wide receiver from Carthage. Antoine Sanders is listed as an athlete. He's like a wide receiver, running back type from King High School. Jalen Brewster from Cedar Hill, 6'4", defensive lineman. Cameron Hall from Mansfield Summit, 6'4", defensive lineman. Both those guys are defensive lineman at 6'4". Brewster's like the 290, 300 type. Cameron Hall's the 235, 230 type. Both play defensive linemen. That's 2026 and 2027. They actually offered 28. It's a rising junior Yes, rising junior in the high school ranks. Jaden Johnson, offensive and defensive lineman, listed as both out of North Shore, 6'2", 270. Tremont Williams is a 2029 athlete they offered. He plays both receiver and defensive back in high school. He's 6'2", a buck 75. Really, really in a interesting list of April. And then it really hit it hard in May. In May, the 2027s they've offered Alexander Herrera, an offensive lineman, 6'7", 315 pounds from Crowley High School. Tavon Bolden from Atascocita. He's a defensive back at 6'2", 185. Julian Caldwell, I think, is the highest ranked recruit in the bunch here. He's a 4-star 2027 wide receiver from Argyle, 6'1", a buck 80. Really good speed out of him as well, but we'll get to him later. Bryce Breeden, a linebacker from Bridge City, 6'2", 210. Keon Hemphill Woods, offensive line from Columbus, is 6'4", 275 with great technique. Needs to get a little bit bigger, obviously. Braylon Fisher, wide receiver from Columbus, 5'11", 180 pounds. Also good runner with the football once he's got in his hands. More on him later if we can get there. 2026s in the month of May, they've offered Carson Crawford, linebacker from Carthage, 6'4", 215. Khalil Salanogo, the offensive tackle from Mansfield Legacy, 6'6", 300 pounds. 3-star tight end Braden Bach is from Argyle as well, 6'5", 230 pounds. Nicholas Howard is an offensive line from Pearland, 6'5", 285 pounds. Uzziah Walmot is from Denton Ryan. He's a 6 foot, 250-pound defensive lineman. Jordan Davis, a safety that's actually plays with a homeschool group. I believe the group is located in DFW. I don't know where the kid's actually from, which is a little awkward in the homeschool group. But he's listed at 6'3", 200 pounds, and he's a safety that will hit you. Keelan Graves, is an athlete, listed athlete, plays receiver and outside linebacker, pass rusher. I don't know which he'll play right now. Is it 6'1", 185 pounds from Kilgore? I could see him putting on weight and rushing the passer. He's got long arms. I could see him also maybe losing 5 or 10 pounds or gaining a little more speed and ultimately becoming a great physical receiver. Either way, okay, clearly the big deal here is in the last less than a month of offseason, the Houston Cougar football staff is getting after it. There's a handful of cities mentioned multiple times. Argyle, right? Columbus had a couple picked in there, a couple from DFW, right? Pearland, I think, got a couple when I went through there just now. They're going after these same, greater Houston, greater DFW Metroplex guys. And while Julian Caldwell is the highest ranked one out of this group offered in this window here, at a 4-star caliber receiver, it also makes sense that a lot of the highest ranked recruits in this 20-person span offered in the last 3.5 weeks are receivers because they're trying to make sure they build around Keisean, right? We talked about how Keisean Henderson's the top player in the 2026 class coming in. He's a quarterback. You got to give him tools. You got to give him weapons, and that makes a ton of sense. Now, this weekend, on top of a lot of things, and Mother's Day Sunday. Happy Mother's Day to the mothers and the mother-like on the listeners, the everydayers that are mothers and mother-like, that is. This weekend, I want to task myself with watching a few of these guys. There's no way I'm going to get to every single one of them. I want to start looking at what these guys turn into. And frankly, as I do that, there will probably be more offers thrown out. It feels like you're getting 3 or 4 a day at this rate. If you got specific ones you want to, make sure you comment their names somewhere where I can see them. Like in the chat down below would be great. But on the whole, I think as I see this, what's interesting to me is I don't know that I understood how hard they were going to hit DFW. And that might just be where the recruiting has been in the last month. They may be moving it geographically as the offseason goes on. But well, DFW is very commutable as far as getting to and from Houston for a high school kid coming to the University of Houston, right? The amounts of Argyles and Mansfields and Crowley and those kind. I just didn't know that was going to be as hard as it is, which is fine. It just is an interesting thing to see. I also wonder if that's kind of playing into where some of these assistant coaches have their own recruiting everyone's got their connections they've made along the way, right? If that's kind of ties into what some of them have done in their time climbing up the college ranks, right? And where they've been getting after. The other thing I think I noticed in looking at this is a lot of the skill guys are long, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". A lot of the lineman type guys are, again, 6'6", 6'7", a 6'5" tight end, right? Height has been an important deal. You think of speed and this and that, but they're clearly looking for big bodies to get in and train once they get to the University of Houston. And that's not to say some of these guys don't have speed or anything like that. It's just interesting that, like, in reading the laundry list here, not a whole lot of 5'10", 5'11" scat back kind of guys, right? Not a whole lot of 5'10" corners that just run a 4-3 flat kind of things. It's not quite the guy they're looking at, doesn't look like. And that's also interesting when we look at what kinds of things that the program's looking to build, right? This is just going to be Willie Fritz's second year. It's kind of his first class. He's building from scratch with a full length of time to do it. And it's interesting just to kind of see those kinds of trends pick up. Now, more specifics will come out of the offseason because we get a long offseason to go through football recruiting and all that. But one like hot topic with NBA playoffs going on that I honestly kind of clicked with me on Thursday that I want to talk about in a second has to do with the Houston Cougars basketball program and the NBA as a whole. I want to talk about that in the second segment. But before we get to that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Amazon Fire TV and Fire Stick 4K. Did you know that it's also an Xbox? Those same console, although the console you don't need it, just turn your TV into a gaming entertainment hub with that Fire TV Stick 4K device. No consoles required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA included. EA Play includes you're ready to play right away. Dive into hundreds of premium titles like EA Sports, College Football, Call of Duty, Avowed, anything you like, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, all on your Fire TV. Affordable gaming is a big plus. High quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of the console. If you already have a console, it's great, affordable and easy travel option as well. I can tell you, as a guy that coaches high school basketball, kids will take that Fire Stick with them. It's a lot easier to take on the road if you can connect to Wi-Fi from a hotel room. And frankly, as a coach, I like that they can sit there and play video games, and I know everyone's in one room in peace. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV locked on to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller is required. Available on select devices, including Fire Stick TV second generation, Fire Stick 4K Max first and second generation, the Fire TV Cube. Park Rangers locked on Coogs here. I want you to follow me down the thought process I got here at the start of this as I look at the Villanova teams of like 2015, 16, 17, 18. In the last run, a handful of teams are the Houston Cougars. Because if you have not been following the NBA playoffs, I get it. It's not everyone's cup of tea. But the New York Knicks are on a crazy hot streak. They're up 2-0, having played both their first two games in Boston, heading back to the Madison Square Garden Mecca to play Game 3 on Saturday. Here's the deal. Villanova had Jalen Brunson, and there were stars and in college. They go to the pros. Ultimately, they've all found their way back to, or I guess 3 of the 4 from that team have found their way back to the Knicks, right? Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, and that's name is escaping me, right? Mikal Bridges, right? Those 3 on the Knicks right now. I kept wanting to say Dante DiVincenzo because he was on the Knicks, no longer on the Knicks. But they found their way to New York. They're playing together. They're winning. It's an electric story. The Nova Knicks continues to be a thing, right? Shout out to the newest Pope, also a Villanova alum. We have an American Pope. He went to Villanova. As I tweeted out, let's have between Fertitta in Italy and the Pope being a Nova guy, let's get Houston versus Nova in the Coliseum. But a video quote that's kind of gone a little viral is that in 2016, about when Villanova was winning their first of 2 titles in 3 years with this core of athletes, these core basketball players. Stephen A. Smith of ESPN was, on First Take, doing his First Take opinionated things. And he said the interesting thing to him, or something to that extent, about the Villanova team was that they didn't have any real pro prospects. Quote, Villanova doesn't have a real pro prospect on this entire squad. Now, those athletes are all pros. Right now, admittedly, that was like at the front end. Stephen A. Smith says in 2016, they had a crazy buzzer beater championship game win in 2016. 2017, they get upset in the second round. 2018, they had a big championship win over Michigan, the same Jordan Poole Michigan that we don't talk a whole lot about. Villanova clearly had pro prospects on that team, but he just missed it. Many people just missed it. They thought they were too small. And Jalen Brunson was a 6'2 freshman. Jalen Brunson was a 6'2 freshman point guard. Josh Hart was a 6'4 kind of wing, kind of forward, right? Mikal Bridges is a 6'6 wing that has a 7'1" wingspan. DiVincenzo is a 6'4 wing perimeter, but not really a point guard or even a 2 guard. And the assumption was like that's a great college team with a great college coach in Jay Wright, and that's how that thing's going to finish, which feels really familiar. Guys that are maybe a little undersized to pros, that compete, that fight to win, that play a good, hard-nosed style of basketball, that are dominant in many ways on the college scene with a great coach, being told they're not pro prospects. It feels to me like there's a lot of crossover and similarity between that run and what Houston's been doing. Now, obviously, a key difference is Houston was 65 painful seconds from winning a national title this year. That Nova team won 2 titles in 3 years. I don't think this Houston run is over for what it's worth. We've been talking a lot. We'll continue to talk through next season about how this is not going backwards anytime soon. However, that is, I guess, a key difference. The tournament can be kind of crapshooty at times. Who knows who you get to play, when you get to play, who's healthy, who's sick, who's whatever, right? But that, I guess, is a key difference. But like, if I were to tell you that Jalen Brunson would be comparable to a Jamal Shead, that Dante DiVincenzo would be comparable to an Emmanuel Sharp, that Josh Hart would be comparable to, I don't know, insert any of the handful of guards they'd play that spot, Marcus Sasser or whatever, right? Mikal Bridges be comparable to whether it's Jarris as the great length and defense, or we're not quite to a point where Jojo Tugler plays on the perimeter as much as Mikal Bridges does, obviously, but something like that with the wingspan involved, right? It doesn't feel that crazy to think that this actually could be a very mirrored image. Now, Jalen Brunson took some NBA time to develop, right? He was a second fiddle in Dallas and whatever, and had his run when Luka missed some playoff time, and then it was like, oh, he's the guy, and then he's New York, and like, for my money, this is not an NBA show. He's having one of the greatest Knicks runs you've ever seen. He's going to go down as one of the most beloved Knicks of all time. I don't know if Jamal Shead does that in Toronto or if he needs to get moved, right? Like Jalen did to get out of Dallas for that or whatever, right? But from a program-to-program perspective, this building a strong, solid winner with guys that are, quote, not big enough to be pros, end quote, or not real pro prospects, end quote, and then watching them do that anyway feels like a very serious potential future for this Houston Cougar basketball program. Again, if I were to tell you that in 4 or 5 years, Jamal Shead was making all-star teams and was winning playoff games and was making big shots in those playoff games, you wouldn't be shocked. If I were to tell you that Marcus Sasser is making big moments in the playoffs happen in 3, 4, 5 years, you would not be shocked. LJ Cryer knocking him down, you would not be shocked. Cryer might be the longest stretch in terms of like physical build out of the bunch, and he was the high point man both seasons he was at Houston. It's not a crazy concept that he finds a way to be a 3-and-D type of guard. We saw how much better he got at defense in his 2 years at Houston on the defensive side of the ball, that is. It would not be crazy to me to see Emmanuel Sharp go wherever he gets drafted or wherever he gets taken a year from now. He's not in the combine or anything like that this year, right? It would not be crazy for me to see. I don't think Milo stays in draft this year. I think he goes back to Houston and then goes to the draft the year later. But it's the same kind of thing where he ends up going in the second round and get told he's, can't do this, can't do that, or what he can't do. And then the people forget, oh, what he can do is play winning basketball. That's the common thread here is all of those Villanova guys played winning basketball. We're told they weren't pros, end up being fine. All these Houston Cougar guys play winning basketball. I don't, just a connection that I was making when I was seeing these things play out. The Nova Knicks are hot right now. And so you're seeing the connections and the people pulling up the videos of Stephen A. Smith saying that back in 2016 and whatever. And it just, I DM'd 3 different people that talk Villanova on Twitter that I follow to say, hey, do you want to come on and talk with this guy? I think this comparison will hold for the next few years. I just think there's something there. I think there's something similar in crossing this over, but maybe I'm crazy. It wouldn't be the first time. Speaking of crazy, Houston's got a chance to make some noise in baseball this weekend. Say what? That's the next segment. But first, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Monarch Money. Now, if you ever check your bank account, you wonder like, okay, where'd all my money go? Dining out, online shopping, Mother's Day this weekend. You probably spent some dough on that. Don't lie to yourself. It's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, full visibility control over all of your finances. But it's not just a budgeting app. Monarch Money is complete financial command center. You track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. You can stop managing your money and start building real wealth. I teach, I coach, I podcast, lots of money going into lots of, pause, not a whole lot of money, but coming from a bunch of places, one thing, right? And all that's easier to manage on Monarch Money. You have it all in a single place. You can set goals, stay on the same page, start accumulating wealth and building wealth without all of the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first full year. Parker Andrews, Locked On Coogs here. We could not get out of here without talking about Houston heading to Arizona State out in the desert to play 3 baseball games this weekend that kind of have a lot of significance potentially on the Big 12 tournament bracket at the end. Now, I will say, before we get a little bit about this one, Houston feels like all but secured a spot in that. Now I'm going to jinx it, so knock on wood. It feels like Houston all but secured a spot in that tournament with their sweep of Utah last weekend. It feels like a long shot they miss it. I will say that I guess technically they could lose the rest of their Big 12 games and multiple teams could win the rest of theirs and things could shift around and whatever and all of that. So I don't want to say it's impossible that they missed the Big 12 tournament after that sweep. But based on what happened last weekend, it feels pretty unlikely. It feels like they're going to be in just what seed they're going to be in at, right? They play Arizona State 3 times this weekend. Arizona State is 32-17, 16-8 in Big 12 play. That's good for second place in the conference presently. And statistically speaking, they've got bats. They got 2 guys, 11 homers, a third guy with a 9. They got 5 guys with over 50 hits that also hit over 300. In 14 Big 12 games, they've got 8 or more runs this season. They had 26. They put up 26 runs on TCU. I'd be interested to see if TCU could have scored more than 26 points in football against them. I probably should look that up. But honestly, they score a lot of runs in part because the desert's kind of a climate where run scoring happens between the air, between the heat, and frankly, it's never cold or not cold for the baseball season kind of sense anyway. And so their numbers are probably a little inflated for what it's worth. Houston's ERAs are technically a little bit lower going into this weekend across the board kind of, but for what it's worth, I would point out, my buddy Richie Bradshaw, host of Locked On Arizona State Sun Devils, would point out that Arizona State DRAs are probably also a little impacted by playing in the desert, right? And so that might be the difference there. It'll be an interesting weekend to see, like, does Xavier Perez kind of get the bats going? I kind of think he's due for another big weekend. He played he had a really good weekend at the plate. Really, he's had a really good season at the plate, but he had a really good weekend at the plate last weekend. And so we'll see if he continues that into the next few days. Houston's got Crescenta on the mound on Friday night at 8:30. Paul Schmitz is scheduled to start on Saturday at 3 o'clock. They don't, Sunday's always TBD. We'll see how that one goes. But it'll be interesting to see how long both Senta and Schmitz go in their respective starts. Frankly, just because you probably have to just know that you're going to give up a few runs. They've got great bats and you're playing in the desert, but how many is too many based on, the innings? And so what Whitting does with that rotation will be interesting to see. Because it does feel like a little bit different kind of thing than your average series, even given the Big 12 play aspect and all that, right? All right, 8:30 Friday, 3 o'clock Saturday, 3 o'clock Sunday, all ESPN Plus. Houston currently, we mentioned, is 10th out of 14th in the Big 12. The top 12 make the tournament. With the sweep last weekend, I think they're in. Baylor is technically on your heels at 11th. And I guess if you went 0-4 against against the rest of the conference, against Arizona State this weekend, Arizona next weekend, and BYU won out, they could catch up from 12th place. It doesn't feel likely. But I guess those kinds of things could happen. The bigger conversation for this one, and what'll be interesting to see after this weekend, is what seeding you're looking like, because you're only a half game behind Texas Tech for 9th place and 2 half games behind Oklahoma State for 8th place. And it really feels like you get up to that 8-9, which is interesting because the way the bracket works out, that 8 plays the 9. Right. And so you kind of get a more favorable matchup, obviously, by jumping up into that and playing that game, a team about your caliber, where there's kind of a gap in the conference in terms of wins and losses and runs and hits between that 7th and 8th spot. And if you're the 10th seed, you have to play that 7th seed in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. So you probably feel like you can get a win if you move up into the 9th spot or into the 8th spot or whatever. Right now, with that said, the question we'll probably be talking more about going into Monday after this weekend of baseball is that the 10th seed sounds great. The 9th seed sounds great because you're playing an 8th seed or vice versa versus the 10th seed playing the 7th seed. But the way the bracket shapes out, the 10 versus the 7 would finish and then play the 2 seed afterwards. The winner of the 10-7 game plays the 2 seed afterwards because the 1 through 4 get to bye. Then the winner of the 8-9 matchup plays the 1 seed in the second round, which is the West Virginia Mountaineers that are on quite a tear this season. The 2 seed presently is, as we said at the start of this segment, Arizona State. Well, if you're competitive this weekend, that's all the more fuel to the fire to get into that 8-9 spot as best you can, because then you've got a matchup in the Big 12 tournaments in Arlington at Minute Maid Park. It's going to probably upset some DOW people at Globe Life Field. And, if you feel like you can keep up with Arizona State and their bats and you can get to that 8-9 spot, then you can hopefully win the 8-9 game because it's a more favorable matchup. You see Arizona State in the second round. You feel comfortable with that one. Suddenly you're making noise in the Big 12 tournament in your second year in it. And I feel like I know a lot more about the reality of that potential situation after the weekend is over. So we'll be back here Monday for all things Houston Cougars. Obviously, if big time things happen over the weekend, Mother's Day commitments, I'm sure will happen right when I'm trying to get other stuff done on Mother's Day. But big time offers, big time commits, baseball news, hirings and firings, and so on. Whatever is going on, Houston Cougars, we're here to bring it to you each and every day at Locked on Coogs. So hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know that we are live. Locked on Coogs is prime. Oh, I should say, second listen today, I'm recommending Locked on College Basketball because I continue to be impressed by how Andy and Isaac cover the landscape of college basketball in the offseason every single day. As well, go check them out. Locked on Coogs is primarily the Locked on Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.